Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a card game. Now this is one that's only released in Germany currently, but is going to be on its way to the United States, hopefully within the next year. This game is called Abluxxen, which is from Ravensburger Games. Now this is a game in which you're going to have a hand of cards, and you're going to be playing sets of the same number card to the table, trying to get rid of your cards before other players. But that's not the only way or only thing you need to do in order to win the game. When you do this, you're going to be comparing the number of cards you played to the number of cards everyone else has played on their previous turn, and then the number on the cards to see if it's higher than those players that you matched number with. If it is, you can decide to set them back, making them take their cards back, or you can take the cards for yourself, or you can allow them to discard the cards and draw more cards from a central tableau in order to try and better their hand. Nonetheless, whatever you're trying to do, you're going to try and get the most cards on the table and the fewest cards in your hand at the end of the round, because the difference between those two will be your score. So real quick, why don't we take a look at what comes inside of the box, we'll see how the game plays, then we'll come back here at the end and get my opinions on Abluxxen. So here you can see the components for Abluxxen. Now, you have a deck of cards, and in this deck of cards are going to be several suits. You'll see that the suits are basically just colors. So we have sixes here. Wow, that's quite the run of sixes that are all kind of this teal color. The fives are green. The 11s are pink, and these cards go up to 13 with some special cards in there that are wilds. Let's see if we can find one, because there's not many of them. There we go. These X's are wilds, which are either the highest single card, or they are going to be any card you would like them to be. So, we have a deck of cards with a whole bunch of cards ranging from 1 to 13. The numbers do not have a different distribution, so there's as many 1s as there are 13s. The only thing that there's a difference in is the number of wilds. We also have this links card here. This is the start player or active player marker, and since this game goes really quickly, I'm going to take my turn, then you're going to take yours, and probably all within a minute, everyone might take a turn. This would be passed like 4 or 5 times every minute, and it's really just completely useless to have this card. If you don't know whose turn it is, you're not paying attention to the game. I would just toss this out and never ever use it. Now, the way this game is going to work is that each player at the start of the game is going to get dealt 13 cards. So let me take 13 here, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and each other player would also have 13 cards in their hand. On your turn, you're going to look through your cards, and you would probably sort these by number, so you would have them sorted out 7, 8, we got 3s over here, put the 11 over there. You get the idea, sort them out by number so you know how many of each thing you have. And so, on your turn, you can play one card, or you may play as many of the same numbered card as you would like. So for example, I could play 1, 1 if I wanted to, but I could also go ahead and play 3 8s, and that would be a perfectly legal play. The objective here is to play cards to the table you don't think anybody will be able to match in the same number of cards and beat in terms of suit or rank of the card. So for example, I may play a single 13 on my turn, because the only card that will beat a single 13 would be a wild. So I would play this out to the front of my area. And basically the next player would then take their turn, and they're going to have a hand of cards, and they're going to look at what they want to play. So we'll just say this is 13 cards, and maybe they decide that they want to play 3 8s. All right. When they do so, they're going to check the board, and they're going to see, has anybody else played 3 cards? Now, the first player didn't play 3 cards. The second player played 3 cards, and he's the only other one right now. So he's going to go ahead and say, no, nobody else played 3 cards, and there's no comparison to make here. The third player would then have his hand of cards. And let's say, for example, that he has a wild in his hand. And he decides to play one single card, and it's a wild. What he has now is that he's going to check and see if anybody else played a single card. Well, we go back and we see this player did not play a single card. He has 3 of a kind, but this player did play a single card. Is my card higher than 13? It is. In this case, I have a choice to make. Either I can decide to take this player's 13, or I can decide that he must decide what to do with it. So, do I want this 13? 13 is pretty good. Maybe I take it into my hand. And I would keep that card. If I do this, there are going to be 6 cards available on the table at all times for players to draw back up from. And any time that you have cards returned, meaning either taken by another player or that you have to take them back, and we'll cover how that works momentarily, you're going to draw cards back from this central area. So anytime you decide whether or not to take somebody's card, you have to decide whether you think there's a better option for them out here in this central area. So once I decide I'm keeping that 13, he can draw any of these cards that he would like, or he may draw from the top of the deck, but he has to draw one card because I took one card from his play area. Instead of allowing him to, or instead of taking the card from him, I can decide to let him choose what to do with the card, and that would give him two options. He could either pick it back up into his hand, and that would be good if, for example, he had more 13s in his hand to make a larger set later, or he can discard that card to a discard pile and draw new cards from this central tableau. Maybe he'd decide to draw a wild because that's clearly better than a 13. Anyhow, I would check my card against everybody else's tableau of cards. If anybody else aside from this player had a single card, they would go through the same procedure. I either decide to keep their card or let them decide to keep or discard it, and keep going in this manner. Once I'm done resolving all of what this is called Abluxxens, it would go on to the next player, and that player would have their hand of cards, and maybe they happen to have 3 10s, and they play those out to the table. They would then check against everybody else once again and see that this player here has 3 of a kind, and 10 is higher than 8. They can decide either to take these 8s from that player and put them into their hand, or to allow that player to take them back or discard them and get new cards. And so in this manner, you're trying to go back and forth and have the most cards out on the table, because the objective of the game is to get rid of all of your cards. Now, you'd think it may be a little bit counterproductive to be taking players' cards back into your hand, but if you happen to have 3 8s in your hand, picking up 3 8s gives you 6 8s and will allow you to play 6 cards on a future turn, which is not only very hard to beat, but of course gets 6 cards out of your hand at one point. The objective here, as I said, is to get rid of all of your cards, but not only to get rid of all of your cards, but also to have a lot of cards on the table when someone does so. Because the way you're going to score is the round will end as soon as one player manages to get rid of their entire hand of cards. When they do so, they're going to check and see how many cards they have on the table and subtract, everyone will subtract the number of cards they have from their hand from the number they have on the table, and that will be their score. Now you may think, well, cards are going to get returned all the time in this case. You know, these would be done something with. Maybe the player decides to take them back, and the player over here would play again, returning some more cards. But once cards are covered by other cards, let's say we made it back and these 10s were not picked up, this player could drop 3 7s on top of them. These 10s are now safe since the 7s are on top of their pile, and only the 7s can be returned in this case. So basically, you want to try and cover cards up, make cards hard to return, and eventually get to the point where you can kind of protect them by playing maybe even a harder set to return on top of them. But in any manner, the player who best gets cards out to the table and has the fewest negative points to subtract via cards in their hands will have the highest score and will be the winner of Abluxxen. Well, there you have it. That is Abluxxen from Ravensburger Games. I like this one quite a bit. So much, actually, that I played with Eric Martin of Board Game Geek fame and had to go get a copy for myself for my own collection. So this is one that actually is not a review copy. It's one that I purchased and is in my collection because I liked it that much. So take that with, you know, whatever grain of salt you need to in form of this review. I actually think probably people are going to be happier that I purchased it. But the game overall, again, very easy to learn. It's simply play a certain number of cards from your hand, and as long as those cards all have the same number on them, you can play them. Then you check and see if you played the same total number of cards as anybody else played on their previous turn, and you check and see if the number on your cards was higher than this. If it is, there's some stuff to take care of. If they aren't higher, then continue on with the next player. And basically that's the whole game. Get rid of your cards as fast as possible, hopefully have more cards on the table than you have in hands, get a positive point value for your turn, or for the game if you only want to play one round, and hopefully your point value is higher than everyone else's. But there is some strategic play here. Sometimes you want to play a low card in order to get somebody to force you to discard it so that you can draw another card from that central tableau that makes your hand even better. Maybe you're holding on to 4 8s, but a 5th 8 would be even better, and there happens to be one in the center of the table. 5 8s is harder to beat than 4 8s, so maybe it's worth losing a turn playing a single card and having it discarded by someone else in order to pick up that extra card and play more cards in the future. It's all about things like that. What's the best strategic move to make? Is it worth setting somebody back, or is the better play one that you can make to further your own hand for a future turn? So all in all, a very good game, one that I enjoy quite a bit, and one that I hope will come to the US soon and be widely available for people to check out. Anyhow, keep your eyes open. That is Abluxxen.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.